report. At this time, as the permanent convention chair, I'm going to name Edward Aikman to serve as the permanent nominations committee chairman, and Nigel Christopher to serve as the permanent resolutions chairman. And the members of that committee, those committees are as follows. For nominations, Tony Jacino, John Schaefer, Marty Jenkins, and Tim Rovell. For resolutions, Don White. Do I see Don? There he is. I knew I saw him earlier. Carl Byers, Mary Hightower, David Byrd, and Christine Ballard. And I'm also going to appoint Jerry Evenwell to be our permanent parliamentarian, and John Schaefer, if you will be our permanent timekeeper. At this time in the convention, we're going to recess. I'm going to let the nominations committee go and the resolutions committee go to deliberate. But before you do, is there anyone in this room who has not filled out a form to attend the state convention who would like to go? The convention will be held June 6th through, no, is it 5th through?
5th through the 7th.
5th through 7th. It starts on a Thursday.
No, 7th through the 9th.
7th through 9th, okay, thank you. It starts on a Thursday and goes through to the end of a Saturday, that Saturday. It would be at your own expense. It's being held in Fort Worth. And are there any people here that would like to fill out an application beforehand? Okay, committee, you're welcome to go.
Okay.
And while they're gone, I'd like to introduce some candidates to you who are running and give them an opportunity to speak. In Precinct 4, there are 4 commissioner candidates running. I see Mr. Riddle is present. I don't see any others, am I wrong? Okay. Al Riddle, would you like to come up and address the convention? I'll give you 2 minutes. Can you do it?
I can do it. Good morning. My name is Al Riddle, and I'm running for Commissioner Precinct 1. My qualifications are that I ran my own business for 29 years. It was a trucking business, a small business, and I had to do it all. Accounting, sales, operations, the whole work. I retired in 2009. I prepared for my retirement. So I'm not running for this job for the salary or the benefit. And as you all well know, they're very liberal since they've had an opportunity to devote themselves that kind of pay. While attending the budget hearings in August and September, it was obvious that our commissioner didn't have any intentions of cutting any expenses. The budget was short $1.6 million, and they didn't want to make any significant cuts. At that time, I decided that somebody needed to get out the information of what happened. They pay themselves, for instance, it's $54,000 salary with a $15,600 unaccountable car allowance, which is probably don't pay Social Security or Medicare or taxes. They may have to pay taxes, but anyway, that's over $70,000. They meet and they're in an advisory position. They don't run anything, but yet they think they deserve that kind of salary. And in my opinion, and some friends of mine said the reason is when we have a one-party system, a Democrat system, they were doing this in the still of the night or in the meeting, nobody was there, and so they could give themselves any kind of pay raise they wanted. I think it should be an honor and a privilege to serve on that commission and make the decisions to help make the county run smoothly. And anyway, but apparently they think it should get paid a full-time executive salary. The salaries in Titus County are around less than 30, in the $20,000. And yet they think they're worth $70,000 to do that kind of job. And then recently they made a little trip. They charged the county travel pay, $300 each going down there, plus that $15,600 they draw.
I'm
So
gonna
this
have
is,
to ask you to wrap it up, Al.
well, I tell you, it would be a pleasure. I'm retired. I don't have anything to do, and I'll give it 100%, and I'm a very ultra-conservative person, and I will work hard for your job, do your job, and I would consider it a privilege and an honor to do it. And thank you for your time.
I know it's out of order, but would you like to say anything for Dana? Dana's husband's running for Commissioner Precinct 3. He does not have an opponent.
Well, I will stand up and introduce myself. My name's Dana also, so when you see that sign, it's Mr. Dana that's running. So you can call me Dana Joe if you want to, and that'll kind of help distinguish between the two. He's working today, works at U.S. Steel in Lone Star, and has been for the past 13 years. We're poultry farmers. We raise chickens for pilgrims. But we have someone that takes care of that for us. So if he does get this position, he will no longer work at Lone Star, and he will be a full-time commissioner. I don't know. I'm talking on his behalf. I work for a CPA firm, and before he decided to run, the first thing that he did was obtain a copy of the budget to see if we felt like that there were any changes that could be made not by just listening to what everybody else had to say, but we went through that line to line, and he has come up with some ideas that we feel like would be some changes that could be made and cut. And so going with that and with prayer, he decided to make that decision. When I say he had to talk to me a little bit about whether or not I want to be in this position also. So anyway, that's just kind of where we are. And he has an email address if y'all like to email him. It's danawapplewhite@yahoo.com.
Thank you very much, Dana. Are there any other local candidates I'm not aware of? Mary, did you want to participate in the resolutions committee? They're meeting. You can, Donna's just sitting there. Excuse me. Thanks, Mary. And Tawny Nix is with us. She is running for the hospital board. Would you like to
I would love to.
say something?
Sure.
Can you put it in 2 minutes?
I can put it really fast. My students would say, oh yeah, she can, she talks about that. My name's Tawny Nix, and I am running for the hospital board. Yes, we are actually having a hospital board election. There has not been one in almost 10 years. So this is the first time, especially also, that a woman is going to be running for the board. And my stance on running for the board is that I think there are some things that need to be changed. There's some managerial positions that need to be changed. The hospital recently has refinanced their bond loan. They're going to be saving over $1 million the next 17 years. So my question is, can we, the citizens, have a tax decrease? And if so or if not, why can't we? Unfortunately, from the hospital, we don't hear a lot of information. We have a transparency issue up there. I have requested financial information from the hospital. So that hopefully will be coming somewhere down the line. We also have issues with patient care. Unfortunately, the hospital has had a slight decline in the number of patients that are coming to the hospital. We want to know why. The many board meetings that I've attended, no one seems to ask any questions about anything. So I decided that it's about time somebody gets up and starts asking some questions. I've been in healthcare for about 20 years. I've worked in patient care. I've done billing. I've fought insurance companies for patients to get paid. And I've worked in administrative areas too. And I have the experience to ask the questions that need to be asked of the hospital. So I appreciate your vote. And it is May the 12th. A lot different than other days that we're having elections. So please remember May the 12th.
There aren't any early elections or anything like that. It's on that day only.
The
Oh,
early
okay.
voting begins April 30th. for this election.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
That's good for clarification because I didn't know that either. Well, locally, we are very, very proud to have our Titus County judge with us this morning too. Brian, would you like to say a few words?
I'll be happy.
The only Republican ever elected.
This is a coffee stand.
Okay.
Nothing. You had a mind place. Focus your eyes up here, not down here.
Just guaranteed under.
That's what you get when you wear white, isn't it? Let me express my gratitude to this group of people here, both individually and as a group. Were it not for you and you and you and you, I wouldn't be here. This was a close election. Every one of you know it. I didn't know anything about how to run a campaign, and by the grace of God and this group of folks, I am where I am today. And this has been a fantastic experience for me. 15 months into this job, it's different every day. It is enjoyable. It is challenging. There's nothing difficult about it. It is literally pure pleasure. And even when I sat in those budget hearings and listened to the things that we had to listen to, that's how it works. That's the way that the system works. And again, there's such a variety of things to do in this job. It is absolutely amazing. In 20 years in the restaurant business, and every day starts to seem like the same thing, but this job is not that way. As many of you recall, some of the things that I ran my campaign on were mostly judicial related. Getting the court system back functioning properly, having court on a regular basis. We now have court every Wednesday, unless there's something. We have something going on every Wednesday. I have guardianship responsibilities. I have probate responsibilities. We have primarily criminal responsibilities, and we've had, I think, 8 jury trials in the last 15 months, and I don't think they had 8 jury trials in the previous 16 years, if I'm not mistaken. But the jury trial docket continues to be whittled down. We just have a handful of names on that list. When I came into office, the weekly docket, when we would call pre-trial docket, included mostly 2006, 2007, 2008 cases, and now everything I think I looked at last week had a 2012 or a 2011 case. I'm glad to say that I have participated in that effort. I don't want you to think it's been my effort only. We have a county attorney in John Mark Coburn and a staff that have done a fantastic job. And there was a lot of pent-up demand in that department, I can assure you. All they needed was a judge who would show up in the courtroom and take care of business, and they have done that. And as a result, that docket stays fresh. And if somebody is arrested today, chances are they're going to be in court within the next 6 weeks to 2 months. Chances are very good, in fact. Someone with 5 DWIs that's never showed up for court. Like we had the other day when I had to revoke probation on a gentleman who I saw a year ago who had had 5 DWIs and had never been called to court. That's how that stuff happens from not holding court. As the lone Republican voice on the Commissioner's Court, I need some assistance. And I'm sure glad to see a good-looking group of capable, honest, fellows that I believe think like I do and can help me get some things accomplished. Now that doesn't mean that I'm not in agreement with some of my commissioners from time to time, but in the areas where we need to make some strides in getting our budget cut down, I need some help. So it's incumbent upon us to get us a couple of new names in there. And you got me in, you can get these guys in, so let's give all the support we can to this group.
Brian, thank you so much for the job you're doing. All of us in this room really appreciate it, but I think our county has seen remarkable changes because you're there as the judge, and it's made such a difference for all of us. At this time, we have 2 candidates in the room that are running in a contested race for House District 5, And I'd like to introduce those people to you. Mary, would you like to come forward, please?
I'd be glad to.
This is Mary Lockadoo. I wanted to say Lockadoo, but it's Lookadoo.
Now, we have a lot of trouble with our names, but Dana, I don't know how you all exist if it's Dana. When your kids yell, Dana, well, they don't probably, but your grandkids will solve that problem for you when you get them. I am Mary Lookadoo. I am a long-time Texas resident. I'm not going to tell you how long, and I'm not going to tell you how much I weigh, but I am a Texan through and through. I was raised on a farm in West Texas at Muleshoe, Texas. Oh, well, good. Somebody knows where Muleshoe is. And I thought at the time that that was probably not the best place in the world for me to be. I didn't know I was getting vocational education right there. And I was, because those family values, hard work, do what's right, have served me good stead. And another area that has served me good stead, I can still drive a school bus because I drove a grain truck way back when. And I've lived all over the state, but I finally landed in East Texas about 40 years ago. And I'm so glad to be in Northeast Texas or East Texas because I love trees. And we have them here. We don't out in the western part. But everything that I've done in my life has prepared me for the next step. I've been an elementary teacher, I've been a middle school teacher, I've been a high school teacher. I even piddled around at teaching adjunct college classes. For the last 20 years, I've been a school superintendent. I'm currently a school superintendent. So I see firsthand what happens that the legislature passes down to us. And everyone in the room, including Mr. Hughes, will agree, the last session was brutal, absolutely brutal, because we cut funding in a number of areas, but education was one. And I bet you if we took a poll in here right now, number one priority, or real close, would be education. And it's so important because I know we've got industry coming into Texas, but what good is it going to do if we don't have an educated workforce in order to supply the needs of those businesses? And what good is it going to do if our citizens are not educated? We're not going to solve the transportation problems. We don't have as much transportation problems here as we do across the state. That is an issue. And if you've gone from Waco to Austin recently, it's definitely an issue in that area. But those kinds of things, our health care, our health care problems, and it's going to be more and more as more people are going to qualify for assistance and so forth. All right, education, what did it do? It cut funding down quite a bit, and there's going to be more cuts the way I understand it. There are more cuts this next year. What happened in the local districts, we had to lay people off, and that affected the economy. Now, I was fortunate I didn't have to lay anybody off. I did not fill some positions. But many schools, and you read about it in the paper every day, that are cutting back or having to rift and so forth. That affects the economy. It also affects what we can do for our kids. It affects larger class sizes. Some of us have had to look at programs and cut back there, and it goes on and on and on. So it's important that we adequately fund our schools. There's a big disparity in what each school gets also. There are some schools across the state that get 11,000 per WADA, which is weighted average attendance. It means nothing to y'all, but it does a lot to me. And 11,000, and I was talking to a superintendent at Lufkin, and hers is $4,700 per pupil. That's not right, y'all. That's not right, and it needs to be addressed. Testing. We test everything that walks. If it breathes in once ever so often, we're going to test. And we're doing that in a time when we are cutting funding, but we're raising standards. And it does not make any sense. And I'm sure that you all that have kids or grandkids, if they haven't mentioned that STAR test and all of those things, and it's constant, and it's taking away from, just administering the test is taking away from time that we could spend on other things. Also, we need to increase our vocational education. We've kind of drifted away from that because of college readiness and so forth. In my world, I would love love for every student to go to college. I really would. But some of them need to go to work. Some of them want to go to work. Some of them want to be diesel mechanics. Some of them want to work on your car. And I certainly want somebody that's prepared to work on my car because I don't want to take it back 52 times. So we need to do that, but we've got to be fiscally responsible. We cannot waste one single dollar because there's no single dollars to waste. So we have to look at everything, put everything on the table. All programs, all agencies, everything. And see where we can cut so that we can fund the things that we, as District 5 people, and I will be listening to you all to determine what's important to you. Healthcare, big, big issue. And I'm not sure what the answer will ever be on the healthcare issues. But all of us need accessible, affordable healthcare. And some of us that are reaching the stage where we need it more often than others. It needs to be available for everyone.
Mary, can I ask you to wrap it up?
Okay. Unfunded mandates for schools, for small businesses, they all need to be looked at, all the mandates. Because, as I said, the increased, for example, accountability and the increased reports and so forth in our healthcare, you could address that. It's just unbelievable what's out there that we're expected to do with limited funds, but we can do it if we get our priorities straight. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Ms. Lockadoo, why did you wait until the second sign-up time to sign up?
All right, that's a good question because people have been asking me to do this before that. And I kept thinking, somebody else will do it.
No.
Somebody else will do it. And we thought we had somebody else to do it. And then that somebody chickened out on us. And so I think it's so important for us to have a choice. And that's the reason I went ahead and did it.
So far, the only thing I heard up there was education, education, education. A little bit on transportation, and then everybody needs a college education
Well, and I did address health care.
and healthcare.
And and if you'll look at my little flyer, I'm for the Second Amendment. Somebody asked me if I had guns in my
Well,
house.
everybody in Texas for the second amendment.
Well, and my daughter is the best shot in our family, by the way.
Well, that's good.
I have a question.
All right.
Will you be supporting Joe Strauss?
I will have to see what the issues are, because at this point, he's up for election also. And he may not even be there. But I would have to look and evaluate at the time to see who's involved and so forth. Yes, sir.
As a fellow administrator, would you say a good conservative is one that is against obsessive regulation?
Yes, sir.
Do you feel that's the case with public education?
The obsessive regulation,
Yes.
yes, sir. It's
So a good-
unbelievable.
So a good conservative can't, on the one hand, say we're against intrusive government, and on the other hand, support that monstrosity we call the STAR test.
Yes, sir. And the ramification of that just goes on and on. But the unfunded mandates that I was referring to, not just for schools, but for the healthcare industry, for all areas of our state. It's just, I'll give you an example right quickly. Bullying. Now we have to have a bullying program. You say, well, that's fine. That's good. And it is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But somebody has to do it, and it costs money. And that's just one little minor example, but you add that to about 15 others, and it creates an expense that
You
we
can't
can't.
speak out of both sides of your mouth.
True.
One hand be for limited government, and then on the other hand, have your own prejudices and pet peeves that you put into law that in essence are regulation.
Right. And where I would be coming from would be listening to you all.
Who's the largest employer in your county?
In my county,
Yes.
the school districts in each little area. They're the largest employer in most, now Mount Pleasant's the
Would
exception.
you say that's the case in most counties?
Yes, sir.
In your district?
Yes, now, maybe not in,
Second, first, second,
right,
third?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All I heard you say was spend more money on education. You know, Washington DC spends more money per pupil than any place else. Why don't we work on more efficiency and teach instead of all this spending money? That's all that most education people say. Spend more money. Money's not our problem. It's the teachers, it's the administration. It's our problem. We've given them raises like crazy.
Right.
Nothing seems to work by spending more money.
Okay, and I appreciate your comment, but I think what I said was that we need to fund it adequately if we're going to require all of these things. Because the Constitution says we will have a general diffusion of knowledge. And then the legislature, or the whoever the body is, will determine what that general diffusion of knowledge is. Now, that may or may not create, but if the legislature says we've got to do this, 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 and this, then it has to be funded some way.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying raise taxes to fund education. I'm saying that we've got to use what we've got, and I'm sorry that I didn't make that clear, that I was not advocating spending. I'm saying let's spend it wisely and scrutinize every dollar that we're spending.
I've got one more question, ma'am. Would you support a state income tax
No.
under any circumstances?
At this point, no. Now,
Cut funding in half for state income tax.
well, I'd have to look at all aspects of that because traditionally, well, nobody wants new taxes. Nobody wants new taxes. And when we compressed the tax rate for our local school district, for local property tax in 2006, it was a good thing. But then the business margins tax that was supposed to replace that money in the public schools didn't do it. It has not funded, and that's why we're in part of the problem we're in now. But I think every issue has to be looked at, whether it's I would hope I would never have to vote for a state income tax.
Well, there's a politician in this area that mouth waters when he thinks the state income tax.
I might foam at the mouth, all right, but I don't think my mouth wouldn't be watering. Okay, I'm sorry, did I take too much time? One other question, somebody else have another one?
Yes, I have. Would you, in statistics, there's the idea that the coefficient of correlation between two things, if it's a 1, then 100% of the time one thing results in another thing. For example, if you spend more money, then you get increased learning. So the coefficient of correlation, if it was a 1, it would mean that 100% of the time you know that if you spend more money, you get increased learning. If the coefficient is -1, there's an opposite relationship. That is, you spend more money and you get less learning. If there's a 0 coefficient of correlation, it means that if you spend more money, it doesn't necessarily mean you get more learning or less learning. There's just no correlation between the two. Okay, so in your opinion, what would be the coefficient of correlation in education, public education, between spending more money and learning on a scale from -1 to +1?
I'm going to let Mr. Hughes answer that question when he gets his turn to speak. But now, one thing you have to understand as far as raising the money and getting more learning. Now, we have a diverse population right here in District 5. And those kids have needs. Someone was saying that they're free and reduced lunch right over here at Pittsburgh. 80%. Those children have different needs, and it sometimes is more expensive to remediate and so forth. Those children, those poor children. So we have to consider all of those too, special ed kids and so forth and so on. So as far as putting your correlation, I lost you about the third plus or the fifth.
I want to answer my own question. All the studies that have been done by the National Education Association, AFT, all the school districts and so forth, right, throughout the country for the last 30 and 40 years, right? The answer is 0. There is no correlation between spending more money and getting more learning. For many examples, Washington, D.C., as we alluded to, spend $10,000 per student. Their learning is less than South Dakota that spends $2,000 per student. There's no correlation. 0 correlation between spending more money and getting kids to learn more. So what is the necessity of having more money for more learning? Answer, 0.
I was having a problem. Could you tell me, I know that you were being superintendent, now, Can you give me what a basic teacher makes?
In our district, the minimum salary is like $30,000.
$30,000?
But the state minimum is a little less than
A
that,
little less than
on the
that.
state scale, yes.
I'm going to cut the debate right now.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mary,
Thank you,
for coming.
appreciate it.
Before I introduce our next speaker, we're shy of about 8 people to be alternates. If there's anyone here that would like to be an alternate to the state convention or have the experience of going there, I have to tell you that our state convention is bigger than the national convention. And you know what that looks like on TV. But our state convention will draw anywhere between 15 and 18,000 people, whereas the national convention will be maybe somewhere, well, they're like 2,500 delegates, and with guests, I mean, it knocks it up to about 5,000 or 7,000, but our state convention is twice the size of that, and it really is a fun experience if you've never been to one. So if there are any people in the room that would like to go to as an alternate, I need you to fill out this form and get it over to the nominations committee soon. Our district has been divided and spliced and whatever, and I just want to say this for Mary and Brian. We used to have a representative with Irwin Kane, but he has been redistricted out of our area, and so this District 5 is extending all the way from Mineola. No, it goes further south than that. Maybe you can explain that, but yeah, up through Titus County. So it's a long gerrymandered district now. But Brian Hughes is representing us now, and he's in this election. So go for it, Brian. Thanks. Don't you welcome Brian Hughes, please?
Thanks. My name is Brian.
You get 5 minutes too.
Okay, thank you. My name is Brian Hughes. Many of us have met before, and the main message I have for you today is thank you. You're here. There's other places you could be this morning. A lot of folks worked hard to get this together, to get the arrangements made and all the details and all the refreshments. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for serving, and I know you had to make choices to do this. This is a uniquely American thing. You know, most places in the world, regular folks like us don't get to participate. This is really something, and so it's always special to be at events like this. Ms. Lickett, it's good to be with you. Good to see you again. And I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of each other and back home too. I want to give you some great news, wonderful news, all right? The legislature is not in session. All right? Enjoy your morning, relax a little bit more. Our founders wisely gave us a part-time legislature, right? And so you send someone down there for one term, and they meet and make those laws, and after the session's over, come back home and live under the laws that were made. And we have to give account for what we did, for what we didn't do. It's a good system overall. It's a good system. It's good to have accountability. So a couple of things that happened this last session. One involved voter ID. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but many people were concerned about the fact that you can't do much in America today without a photo ID. But in Texas, you could still vote. Know what I'm talking about? Yep. This was a real concern. We found out down in Harris County, there were 3,000 people registered to vote that were not citizens.
That's right.
And that's the ones that they found on the voter roll. So the voter ID bill is something that was worked very hard on. We passed it in the House 2 sessions ago. It didn't pass the Senate. Passed it again last session, and it finally became law. The governor signed it, and then the federal courts and the Justice Department intervened to stop it. So we're in court right now. And Judge, you know about fighting the feds. You know what I'm talking about, what it's like when they start meddling with our stuff. But we're fighting the feds now. So the voter ID law won't be in effect for this primary, unfortunately, but we believe it will be in time for the fall election. We certainly hope so. A lot of the discussion we just had was about fiscal responsibility. We know that things have slowed down, right? The economy is not where it was. Now, we're better off here than most places, but we recognize things have slowed down. And so, just like you have to at home and like you have to in your businesses, we have to prioritize our spending and of course, focus on where the money needs to be put. Now, let's just talk. We talked about taxes. Let's look around the room. Who here is not paying enough in taxes? All right?
Warren Buffett doesn't live here.
There you go. Okay. All right. That's right. Hey, Bridget Matt says you're not paying enough in taxes. He's pointing to you.
I'll vote for Warren Buffett.
Sir?
I'll vote for Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett. Well, fair enough. You know, the point is, you know, difficult choices have to be made. And I don't know anybody, I mean, tell me whose taxes we need to raise. We need to take what we have and spend it wisely. We all agree about that. We all agree on that. And of course, that's where the rub comes in. So this last session, we came in with a lot less money to work with than we had had before. And so the first thing we did was look at every area of the budget and find those things where the government just shouldn't be. You know, the state government is much leaner than the federal government, but still there's stuff that shouldn't be there. And we found things in the budget, corporate welfare, pork barrel projects, earmarks. The first step was to try to get rid of all that stuff, and most of that's gone. Some of those votes we lost, but most of that's gone. Then the next step was to look at all the other agencies other than public education. Carved out public education at first. Look at all the other agencies and see what we can trim back on. The first budget cut that I voted to make was to cut our own budgets in the House by 10%. We cut our own budgets by 10%, and then other state agencies followed suit. Some were cut by as much as 17%, and those were hard decisions. Those affect people. But again, the choice was either raising taxes on the people of Texas in the middle of a recession, on families, or spending wisely. That's what we tried to do. Of course, public education is the biggest piece of our budget, as it should be. The Constitution requires it. It's the right thing to do. It's also good for the economy. It's the right thing to do. And so whenever we're making significant cuts to the budget, we have to look at everything. So once we made every cut we could make, then we looked at the rainy day fund. Thankfully, our founders gave us a system. Just like when Joseph was put over the affairs of Egypt in the Old Testament, remember during those 7 fat years, he stored up grain for the 7 lean years. Y'all remember that? We do the same thing. And so thankfully we have the rainy day fund. And so we use part of that rainy day fund to fund education, to get us caught up for the rest of the year, to get as far as we could. And then we looked at what was left. And at that point, the education budget was looked at. We tried very hard to protect the classroom as much as possible. And those cuts are difficult to make. And Ms. Luckady made a very good point about school finance, about the inequities. Even in a good year, when there's plenty of money flowing through the system, our rural schools, our smaller schools, and even some larger ones around here are getting shortchanged. And I filed a bill even last session to deal with equity, to even that out. That's a big fight. That's a fight that continues. It's a big fight. The votes are in the urban and suburban areas, so that's the problem. We continue that fight. So that's going on. But we appreciate what our teachers do. We know they're being asked to do more and more with less. There's mandates from the feds, from the state. And so that's one of the reasons that this last session I voted to put a 2-year moratorium on all this testing. We heard about the STAR test. In the House, we voted to put a 2-year moratorium on all of this testing. It's just gone way too far. It passed the House. It did not pass the Senate, and so it's coming back. I'll do it.
Okay.
So that's where we are. We've got to back away from this testing and let our teachers teach and use their gifts and do their jobs. Those are big issues we're going to be talking about. We're very thankful to have passed the sonogram bill, so that when a woman goes in to make a decision to terminate a pregnancy, they're already doing a sonogram, but they don't let the woman see what's growing inside her. So now in Texas, it's already the law today. Now when a woman goes in to seek an abortion, they've got to let her look at the sonogram. We want to make sure a woman has all the facts when she's making a big decision like that. Again, overall, we're thankful for the way Texas is going compared to others. We've got a lot of work to do. I'm very thankful to be endorsed by the NRA. We talked about the Second Amendment. I'm endorsed by the NRA and the Texas State Rifle Association. We're endorsed by Texas Right to Life. We're endorsed by Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. I want to hear from you. I work for you. We want to get this right. This is a 2-year term. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you. Thank you for letting me be with you today.
Will you take some questions?
I'd be happy to take some questions.
Are there any questions out here?
Yes, sir.
Would you vote for a state income tax?
Would I vote for a state income tax? No, never. No, sir. A state income tax is about the only tax that's worse than the property tax. The income tax. Let's be clear about that. No, sir. I will not vote for a state income tax. No way. Thank you. Good question. Good question. And let me say this. The revenue comes in. The way to solve our problem is to grow our economy, increase jobs, increase investment, so that more companies and more people are coming in, paying taxes, and grow our way out. And again, prioritize that spending. We all agree on that. We all agree on this. Anybody have any other questions? You guys are so patient. I know you're here to conduct business. Thanks for listening to
No, wait, there are other questions.
Yes, sir.
You talked about testing and moratorium and all that.
Yes.
With Pearson being as
a large presence in testing. What is going to be done about, we spent 45 days, we're spending 45 days testing this school year. What can be done to shut that down?
That's right. The questions about testing. Pearson, that's the company that administers the test, I think. They're based in the Dallas area somewhere. Again, in the House, we had an amendment filed with Representative Dan Flynn to put a 2-year moratorium on all the testing. This was filed with the state budget. I think some of us here are familiar with that. And the amendment said if the local school board and administration wants to opt out for 2 years, they can do that. And they can use that money they would have spent on testing for teachers, for needs as they see fit. That passed overwhelmingly in the House. The bill went over to the Senate, and Senator Eltoff supported it. Our senator did, but some others didn't, and so it failed. However, that was last year. Now that this STAR test is rolled out and we're getting all the feedback on it, I think that's going to pass next time. I think it should. And testing in general, there's a place for testing. We got to have accountability, but it should not drive everything like it does now. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. I know that, and that's why I voted to put it all off for 2 years. So I think that's going to pass next time. I think we're in good shape. But I mean, we need to hear from you. Senator Eltoff needs to hear from you. Everybody needs to hear from you on that. Thank you, because we're listening.
Good question.
Brian, I wasn't here to hear your speech and that, and so I was just wondering, I'm an educator also.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, we have a problem with the funding of education. How do you plan on fixing that?
That's exactly right. That's been a big discussion this morning. We've got to take the funds we have and prioritize them. And there are things in the budget outside of education that we can do without. Our priorities are public education, transportation, and public safety. Another big thing we can do, by the way, is fighting Obamacare. You know what the biggest threat to the school funding is? You know what the biggest threat is? It's federal health care spending. Right now, public education is the biggest piece of our budget, but health care is catching up, and it is squeezing out everything else. Even without Obamacare, federal Medicaid mandates are getting bigger and bigger. And so that's why pushing back against the feds, fighting Obamacare, fighting the EPA, which is killing our jobs, like they're trying to do right here in Titus County. We know about that. That's why we've been standing up to them and kind of hollering at them. So that's the answer, taking the funds we have and prioritizing it, putting them in education, putting them in the classroom, and getting rid of the fluff outside of education in the budget that we don't need. We made some cuts last session. We need to do more outside of education next session. I agree. Amen.
I know that businesses in Texas they're growing, they're trying to grow, especially in the Dallas area.
That's right.
More businesses from out of state are coming into
right.
the state. What are your thoughts, and maybe if you have any ideas, about drawing businesses to this district in this area to help grow our local economy?
Man, a good job is better than any government program, right? I mean, jobs are what we need. We all agree on that. And there are things we can do. Thankfully, about 1,200 people a day are moving to Texas from the other states. Now, that's from the other 49 states we're talking about 1,200 a day, because this is where the jobs are. In states like California and Illinois, they're running the jobs off. Illinois just voted to increase they've already got a state income tax. They voted to increase their personal income tax by 50% and their corporate income tax by 67%. When they did that, governors from other states started writing letters to employers in Illinois saying, hey, come on down, come to our state. Caterpillar, come to Texas. Caterpillar is based in Peoria, Illinois, and they're moving more of their operations down to Texas. The last major automaker left California because of the taxes and regulations. California is a beautiful place. The politicians are about to ruin it. The jobs are coming here. The last auto manufacturer left California, the big one, and came to Texas, Toyota down in San Antonio. So if we can keep regulations low and taxes low, and just reasonable, I think that's where we're going to draw jobs here, right? And if we do that, you're exactly right. That's more employment, more taxes are being paid, more money for our schools, for our priorities. That's the solution, to raise taxes now. And again, there's been a lot of talk about this. Let me just make it clear. We do not need to raise taxes. Amen? Is that okay with everybody? We don't need to raise taxes. We need to prioritize our spending, grow our economy so we have more to fund our priorities, give our teachers what they need, free them up. Now let them use their gifts and teach. We're for that. We're for that.
I have one more, and I don't know if you have anything to do with the interstate system or the highway system in this area. Just an idea, what would you think about an interstate system from Houston to this area?
Well, the I-69 is actually in the works. The question is about an interstate highway from Houston up this way. I-69, most of it will run along the current US 59, but then it cuts back our way a little bit. That's actually in the works. It's been approved by TxDOT. We just got to get the money for it, and that's another issue because our highway funding, a lot of that comes from the gas tax, which is supposed to be dedicated, most of it, but it gets diverted other places. So we've got to have it. I mean, we're in pretty good shape around here, but you go to Houston, you go to Dallas, you go to Austin, Waco, and we see those real problems. Oh, yes, sir.
I've got just a redistricting question.
Oh, yes, sir.
Because it's been very confusing, I think. I don't know about everybody else, it has been to me.
It has been to all of us.
The way it's currently aligned, the state representative district that, of course, is in Titus County, your district now.
Yes, sir.
And the state senator's district.
Yes, sir.
Is that going to change 2 years from now, or is this the way is it set now?
That's a good question. Technically, this is an interim map. It was ordered by the court for this session only, but the map that was passed by the legislature for our area is the same as the interim map. So it may change in other parts of the state in 2 years, but it shouldn't change here. Shouldn't change here. So still be in Senator Elti's District 1, still be in House District 5, and still be in Congressman Hall's 4th Congressional District. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
The districts really that are in question are more in the metroplexes.
So ours
right.
shouldn't change.
Ours should not. Ours should not change. There may be changes in other areas, but ours should not. We should not. Carl.
Brian, our governor basically defunded Planned Parenthood in Texas. And I think the courts have now decided they wanted to sue. I'm positive I know where you stand on this,
right.
but I would like for you to give the convention your position on what the governor has done.
Carl, thank you. That was done by the governor and by the legislature. The question is about Planned Parenthood. Now, Planned Parenthood does a lot of things, and we hear about good services they provide. To most of us around here, we see Planned Parenthood as the largest abortion company, really, in the country. That's really what they are. Planned Parenthood has a budget of about $1 billion a year. Do you know that $300 million, out of $1 billion budget, $300 million comes from government grants and contracts? And we looked at the budget, now we're getting some of that from Texas. So we went through the budget line by line and we took money away from Planned Parenthood. We put some of it over into education for autistic children. We put some into deaf and blind children's education. We tried to take money from them and put it in places it really needed to go, areas that would have been cut otherwise. So we're very thankful for that. Other states are looking at what Texas did as a model. So yes, I'm pro-life. Good folks are pro-choice. That's fine. I work for everybody and I listen to everybody. But even folks who feel strongly that a woman should have a right to abortion, but even most of people that believe that don't think government money, don't think we should take your tax money and use it to pay for abortion. That's offensive. And so that was a huge victory. The sonogram bill, the defunding of Planned Parenthood, that's really why I voted for the budget, because we got that in there. I appreciate you bringing that up. That's important. You guys are so patient. You have work to do today. Thank you. This isn't the first time I've seen you. It won't be the last time. Please pray for us. I ask you to pray for us. We have some very attractive yard signs out there you can take on the way. If you like those yard signs, you will love these bumper stickers. They assure me these are the vinyl kind that will peel off. If it doesn't come off after the election, you call me and I'll come scrape it off your car myself. I'm going to take some of those, and finally, out there, there's some little forms. If we don't have your contact information, we'd love to email you, to stay in touch with you. And again, most of all, pray for us. Tell us how we can be helping you. Thank you a lot. God bless.